Now for the monthly program. Today's topic is cybersecurity for seniors, and it's being presented by our own Amy Weber, Director of Hasp. Now you're going, how in the world would the Director of Hasp be an expert in this area, right? Are we all wondering that? We know you're at ease using the computer. That's been apparent to us. But just so you know, before she came to work with us, she was an information technology specialist at the U.S. Department of Commerce and at the U.S. Department of Justice. So she's been in this field for a while. And I have to also tell you, you must take this cybersecurity at heart, because trying to find information about you online was very difficult. So as we rely more on technology and stay connected with people we know and manage our lives, staying safe online has never been more critical. In fact, I just noticed in the paper, I think Grand Rapids Press, that a woman was bilked out of $4,000 by trying to buy a pet online. Amy will explore the current landscape of digital threats, discuss rising prevalence of online fraud, identify specific scammers used to target seniors in particular, and explain why caution is your best defense. You'll leave with a practical, easy to understand strategy to protect your personal information and finances, and learn how to take advantage of the digital landscape with confidence and peace of mind. After Amy's presentations, we will take questions from the floor in here and also from our online participants. Just want to remind you that this is a time, the question time, to clarify. It's not necessarily to present your point of view, okay? So at this time, let's welcome Amy.
Let me turn that on. Can you guys hear me in the back? Great. Okay, so give me 1 second. I'm going to have to share a separate presentation with the people online. So everybody just hold your horses for 1 second. Yeah, hold them horses. One of the reasons that Alice couldn't find a lot of me online is that there's a Playboy bunny with my same name. So, yeah, can we see that? No, you cannot. Okay, we're seeing that one slide, Joan? And perfect. Okay. All right, good morning. We're going to be talking about cybersecurity for seniors today. As Alice mentioned, I worked in the IT environment for the government for a lot of years. You don't need to know how many years I was there working with that. So we're going to be talking about cybersecurity. Before we launch into it today, I want to let you know where the data in these slides is coming from. I think more than ever, we need to start asking our presenters where they're getting their information from in the slides. So most of the information you'll see today comes from the Federal Trade Commission. They're the people that are in charge of collecting information on cybercrime. Why? I don't know. Don't worry about it. It dates from 2019 and some Senate committee. I'll get you the sources. They're on the final slide. But the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, is who's in charge of getting information about cybercrime, collecting it for the government. There are two investigative arms in the government that investigate cybercrime deeply. There's a lot of agencies that do it, but the two that do it the most are Homeland Security Investigations, which is the investigative arm of Homeland Security. They handle anything that touches on international. And then the FBI, which is the investigative arm of Justice. So there's data from both HSI and FBI in here. And then lastly, we're going to have a number of slides from the AARP. The AARP is actually leaders in this field for education as well as resources for individuals over the age of 50. Okay, so very interesting for them to be involved in this space too. Now, we're also going to hear the word senior a lot and elder out there. What does that really mean? Well, for the AARP, it's anybody over the age of 50. So all of us, right? For law enforcement, they tend to use over 60. Well, over 60 is used often with reporting. Over 65 is used for a lot of government statistics. That just has to do with when Medicare and Social Security starts to kick in. And then you're going to see some things that are over 70. That's really something that's happened in the tech sphere. They've started to collect a lot of data for individuals over the age of 70. That's, as far as I can tell, an arbitrary number they've come up with. So we're going to just be talking about everybody over the age of 50. Let's just agree on that, okay, as we continue through this. Okay, so if my slide will work, hold on. Likes me, doesn't like me. There we go. Let's try this. There we go. There we go. Okay, so when we're talking about cyber security and seniors, what we're really talking about is what's called elder financial exploitation. And it is the common and most fastest growing type of abuse for seniors as well as individuals with disabilities. As you can see from this slide, 4 in 5 victims of reported fraud are between the ages of 60 and 79. We're going to talk about the underreporting of fraud and also what types of fraud are actually reported, but just kind of keep that in your mind, that this is a demographic that is very valuable, or I'm sorry, very valuable for the fraudsters, I should say, but a demographic that's very vulnerable. 2.83 billion was stolen from older Americans in 2022. Remember, we're talking about people over 50 because that's an AARP statistic. 72%. This is a statistic that's going to follow us around a lot throughout this presentation. 72% of that money is stolen by people that are known to the victims. Okay, it's going to factor in a lot. It's a big statistic and something we all need to be aware of as we continue through this presentation. So congratulations, you're the largest and wealthiest generation in US history, which also means you're the biggest patsies out there. You're what everybody wants, specifically because of that, okay? Here's another way of looking at those statistics. Something to understand is that young adults, so the individuals between the ages of 20 and 29, reported losing money to fraud more often than individuals over the age of 60. However, the amount of money that they're losing is significantly less than the money of individuals over 60. So 44% of younger people reported losing money to fraud, right? Only 24% of individuals older. However, the amount of money that's being lost is significantly different. So this is why this type of crime is something that is very interesting to law enforcement and to the federal government to track, okay? Financial fraud has been on the rise. We can see this chart goes back from 2002, which is really when online banking started for the consumer. Businesses were using it before then. But for the consumer, it was really 2002. So you can see fraud is that kind of bluish line, what do we call that? Teal blue. Identity theft, which is the one a lot of people are scared about, is actually this orange line. And you can see it skyrocketed right about the time that we started getting robocalls really in there and text messages. You saw a lot more of that happening. However, it started to dip during the pandemic. It's starting to rise again. But identity theft is actually not the one that we should be the most concerned about. There's other types of financial fraud that we should be more concerned about and that are constantly rising in the environment. Okay, one other thing I want to, before we really deep dive into this subject, one other thing you should be aware, you've probably heard of the dark web. And you might think that a lot of what's happening in this nefarious land of fraudsters is happening in the dark web, okay? Which is also where the drug trafficking and the human trafficking and the really bad forms of pornography are also happening. That's not true, okay? So the surface web, Google, Bing, Wikipedia, some of these AI chat agents that all of us are using now, those exist on the surface. So think of anything that you access that doesn't require you to have a username and password, that's on the surface. Okay, you're going out and you're scrolling on sites, you know, shopping sites, you're going to Macy's.com or Myers.com, even some of the couponing apps that are out there. Those are going to be on the surface. The vast majority of what people do, though, on a day-to-day basis, if you're using any type of the cybersphere for financial transactions or even just medical records or anything to do with Medicare or Social Security, you're in what's called the deep web. So this is the area that really requires username and passwords. So that's an easy way to think of it. Some of these require two-factor authentication. Sometimes there's other means that you got authenticated in, portals that you have to access it through, specific apps you're only allowed into. That's the deep web. And that's where the majority of fraud actually happens to us, is when we access the deep web. We've gone to the deep web to access something, and then fraud is happening in this sphere. Okay, so something to keep in mind. Okay, so why are seniors vulnerable in this space? And I know I'm going to talk about a lot of negative things, by the way. a lot of terrible negative things that are out there, but I'm doing it so that we all get smarter, right? That what we say is if you can spot a scam, you can stop a scam, right? This is about us getting ourselves smarter. And more importantly, and this is what I'm going to challenge you later on in the presentation to do, get yourself smart enough to be a resource for your friends and family, okay, on this space. And that way we can go have fun on the internet without having to worry about it, right? Because there is a lot of great things out there. We don't want to get away from the cyber world. We just want to make ourselves safer while we're in the cyber world. Loneliness is really a key characteristic of a lot of victims of fraud, particularly large financial fraud. Loneliness haunts us as we get older, not just from the grief of losing a spouse or losing children, or losing the older you get, the more likely, you're going to be losing whole support systems around you, your friends and family. But it's also about the loneliness that comes from isolation, living alone. We live in a society now where seniors age in place, and those seniors and their children or their other forms of family may not live anywhere near them, right? And we all might only be connected in the digital world in a plane flight, right? So this loneliness isn't just about how you're feeling about yourself in the world. It's also about you might be physically isolated as well. Memory loss, about 1 in 10 people over the age of 65 have some form of dementia. This isn't just Alzheimer's, it's some form of dementia. This can haunt us when we can't remember. It's not just your passwords, okay? None of us can remember our passwords. You just can't remember our passwords. It's not just about that. It's you can't remember if you subscribe to a specific service. You can't remember if the phone number that's being called to you is a legitimate phone number or not. You can't remember the names of your children's friends. So you don't know if somebody calling you claiming to be their friend is actually their friend, okay? So it's more than just, can I remember how to get into a system? Or can I remember how to restart my Chromebook, which is the question I get from my in-laws every other day. How to restart the Chromebook. Okay, and then silent. Elder abuse is vastly underreported. One of the reasons for that is people don't know where to report it. So we're going to talk a lot today about where you report these crimes. But the other reason for that is we're back to the 72%. 72% of victims are victimized by their family or people they know. So it's complicated to report it. They don't want to report their family. They don't want to report that grandson who's addicted to drugs, right? They're worried about that. So it is drastically underreported. There's embarrassment and denial. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. That tend to haunt the younger generations more. As we get older, we get perspective and we realize that we shouldn't be embarrassed about certain stuff. We're going to talk about how seniors are starting to get into the spaces of the internet, particularly dating apps or apps that run across devices, and embarrassment comes into there. And then again, the family members, right? So this is why seniors are a vulnerable population in the cybersphere. Perpetuator profile, I hate to keep hitting this over the head, but family members, this is the biggest group, okay? And then we have strangers, we put them into two categories, strangers you meet and strangers you don't meet, okay? We're all scared of the strangers we don't meet. We've all heard the horror stories about somebody losing something to a Nigerian prince, right? Right? We've heard these stories. That's actually the least amount of what's happening with cybercrime for seniors. It's family members and the strangers you meet, caregivers, home health aide, home repair people. Who are you bringing into your house? If you live in one of the retirement communities, how are they vetting people that are coming into those spaces? Not just the people that are there every day, that you see with, might develop a relationship with, know their name, they've had a background check, but who are they bringing in to talk to you? Who are they bringing in to interact with you for exercise regimes? Do you know every volunteer over at Evergreen Commons? Right? These are strangers that you've met. You may even know their name. Don't be afraid of everybody, but this is where the common sense is that we have to start thinking about that. How are we ensuring, and what information are we sharing with these people, right? You can be surrounded by nefarious strangers all you want. If you don't share your information with them, okay, have fun. They can be nefarious all they want. Types of fraud. Let's talk about this for a second. Imposter scams are actually the most number of reported fraud cases. So about 845,000 cases. I believe this is from 2000. I can't read that at the bottom. 2004, actually, which is from the FTC's book. So it's dated. But these imposter scams, I should say 14. I think that's a typo, or does it say 24? 24. Thank God. Oh God, my eyesight today. 24. I was like, how did I put a 2004 up there? I didn't. Imposter scams. Now you might be thinking, well, hold on, Amy. You said imposter scams were going down, and you said they were not the majority. So why are we seeing this high statistic? Because those are the ones getting reported. If somebody steals your identity, particularly if it has to do with your social security card or your Medicare card, or it has to do with your lease on your apartment, or it has to do with your mortgage, you're going to contact the police, okay? These are the highest reported ones because of that, because imposter scams have deep ramifications, and often you have to start with law enforcement. And you know, if somebody steals your identity, you should contact the police. You might not think about that when you buy something fraudulent off of Amazon. Do I contact the police? Short answer is no, but we'll talk about where you do report it so that the FTC gets this in here. Online shopping negative reviews, that's the second highest because those are reported. I've been the victim of this. A couple Christmases ago, I was trying to find a last minute present for my husband, who's notoriously hard to buy for because he just buys everything for himself. So what am I supposed to buy him? And I saw something that looked great. It was on Facebook. It was a pop-up ad. Well, it was in my feed. It was in the ad and it had a great video. It had a lot of online reviews. When I clicked on the website, it had the secure symbol, all that stuff, right? Buy it. What shows up in my doorstep? Not that. Not that thing. Didn't show up. Didn't look like that at all. It was a complete scam, right? I reported it both to the FTC and through Amazon's online shopping. Okay, so online shopping, negative reviews is a big one these days. You've heard about this. This is a form of protest now. So this is getting kind of complicated, but this is when individuals, particularly for political reasons, go out into a company's website and put a lot of negative reviews to drive down the numbers, or conversely, put a lot of positive reviews to drive up traffic. Like I said, right now, this is a form of protest. They'll go out to businesses that have supported or not supported a specific political agenda, driving down Yelp reviews, driving down traffic onto those sites. So that's part of fraud. Okay, business and job opportunities, we don't have to worry about. Just know that there's a whole section of cybercrime that's just dedicated to businesses. And here in the West Michigan area, this is a big deal for Homeland Security. There is a lot of fraud related to businesses, particularly around the agricultural community. So this is a big one in West Michigan. And now we have the investment related, right? So this is where we're getting that look at the difference in total losses. For investment related, 5.69 million, right? So we're starting to get a lot bigger losses as we get into investments. So this is people defrauding seniors, saying like, you know, we need, well, we'll get into it. I won't get ahead of my slide, but just know investment related is a big portion of the money. All right, so let's talk about a couple of these that you might encounter. So this government imposter fraud. This is the big one, ones that people are concerned about. Like I said, very often reported because it has to do with your Social Security and it has to do with your Medicare. All right, 265,000 of these were reported to the FCC in 2024. This is, a lot of these have to do with VoIP technology. So voice over IP, that's what VoIP stands for. It has to deal with the caller ID on your phone, okay? Easy answer, caller ID on your phone. Never trust the caller ID on your phone. If you have a contact saved, I'm doing this and none of us do this anymore, right? It's like this. But if you have the contact saved in your phone, trust the caller ID. If the caller ID comes up and it's not one of your contacts, it's not somebody you saved, don't trust that. Okay, don't trust that it's out there. The big thing to know about this one is that government agencies will never ask for your bank account or your information online, okay? And they're also not going to send you a letter asking for your bank account information and asking for you to send that back. There are some rare instances where they might ask you for personal information through the mail, but they will make you get it notarized, okay? If you ever have any question about a government agency asking for any information, tell the person you're going to call back, hang up the phone, go online, actually look up the agency, call the 800 number, call the whatever consumer number is available for that specific agency. Stay on hold for about 3 days. Somebody will pick up the phone eventually, and then you talk to them, okay? Yes, I get it. Okay, 2.4 billion robocalls are made every single month. Can you imagine the computing power involved with 2.4 billion robocalls? Those data centers are huge and they consume water and resources and power. That is a lot of space. This is also, because of that reason, actually, you're going to hear a lot about, this was recently in the news a couple months ago, they said they got rid of a terrorist cell up in New York, right, New York City. And what they had done was they confiscated a whole bunch of telephones. And the reason for that was there's a way to, and I won't get into it, but there's a way to hook phones up to make mini call banks. They're using the computing power of regular iPhones to create mini data centers to forward robocalls, which is helping them create portable data centers so they can move the scams around to different geographic stations, making it harder for law enforcement to track them. So I've always said that if criminals would just give us their brain power, their creativity and brain power, my God, we could solve all the ills of the world with all of that. Okay, another one, the IRS impersonation scam. This kicks up this time of year. So I left this slide in here because this kicks up right about now. Individuals calling, saying they're with the IRS. We sent you several notices. You failed to respond. They'll often talk about local police might have an arrest warrant out for you because you forgot to pay your taxes. This one is particularly hard hitting. People fall for this one a lot because we know the IRS will actually go after us. Okay. They are an actual entity that does want to actually get money from us. So when somebody says, hey, we need your money, it's something that we know that the IRS is going to be doing. However, again, the IRS, you need to hang up the phone. You need to actually call the IRS. If you ever have a question about an arrest warrant that is being out for you, please feel free to call your local sheriff's department or police. They will be more than happy to run your name on that and tell you that that is usually BS. And if you do have an arrest warrant pending, well, you can get that rectified. You can work with them to get that over there. Big one that happens with IRS scams is something that happens with a lot of financial scams, is just discouraging people to talk to others, right? They'll either bring up that embarrassment factor or they'll bring up the factor that time, right? Their urgency. You need to, don't call your sibling, don't call your son, don't call the cops, talk to me, let's get this worked out so this doesn't escalate, okay? This is one where we start to see that way that scammers can use to prey on us and our emotional instincts when it comes to our own safety and security and our financial security. It's big as part of this scheme, okay? The grandparent scam, that's what it was called a few years ago, still kind of has that name, but really it's any type of family member calling with a scam. These were popularized a couple years ago. We heard a bunch of stories on the news. It is possible with modern technology, and because the younger generation tends to post a lot of videos, which we will talk about in a second, post a lot of videos and a lot of content online, it is possible to impersonate somebody's voice. It is possible to do mock photos of individuals holding newspapers from today, like the old school kidnapping schemes. It is possible to fake all that now, very, very easily. Okay. Does it happen often? No. And these are usually for targeted individuals. So people have been selected to be targeted. You don't want to just throw out a scam of calling every grandparent, telling them you kidnapped your kid. How many grandparents are going to have $100,000 in liquid cash lying around to give you? Not a lot. Okay. So these are usually targeted scams at anybody. What's more likely that falls into this scam is somebody that your relative knows calling you and saying your relative is in a situation where they need money. Okay. So you have that grandson. I'm just going to use your poor drug addicted grandson is out there, right? And his friend, his roommate calls and says, oh, he's in a bad shape. I need to get him to the hospital, but I don't have enough money for a taxi. Can you PayPal me or Venmo me $50 and I'll take him to the hospital for you? That sort of situation. Those sorts of scams where we're impersonating either our loved ones or impersonating the people around our loved ones in order to exploit us for financial gain. Okay, that's kind of fitting all in this scam too. It also do things like, they'll talk about car repairs, medical bills, getting out of jail, traveling. I have a couple cousins who this is kind of who have issues with drugs, and this is kind of the way they've interacted with older adults in our family. is specifically calling. Oh, but I have my kids with me and the car just broke down on the side of the road and I really need it, it repaired. That sort of situation. This all falls into this grandparent scam. The FTC received about 25,000 complaints of family imposter scams in 2024. That is dramatically underreported. Of all the times my cousins have done this to older members of my family, we've never once reported it. Right? This is hard. This is hard for families to do. Okay, but just know that it does exist and it is a form of financial exploitation that exists out there. Romance scams. Okay, so seniors are turning to the internet for dating. That's doubled in the last 3 years. 12% of those ages 55 to 64 are using mobile dating sites. Not only that, but people 55 and older are the fastest growing segment of the gambling sites, all the gambling sites that are out there. They're the fastest growing segment of OnlyFans account creation. OnlyFans is a website where you can go for curated content, video content about specific topics. It can be things like crafting and gardening. It's often specific forms of pornography. And people 55 and older are the fastest growing consumers of Pornhub, which is the largest pornography site online. Okay, so that opens individuals up for not only exploitation, but for that embarrassment category, right? If they're scammed off one of those sites, they feel like they're in that embarrassment category for that. Okay, so we're going to talk about normalizing with your friends and family that nobody needs to fit into that category if they're the victim of fraud. Okay, but something to be aware of. Scammers commonly assume identities of U.S. servicemen. I want to emphasize that point. So people on dating sites, when they're trying to scam individuals out, they try to take them away from the sites. They befriend them on these dating sites or befriend them in their on the other sites, and then they pull them into private conversations and text messages or email. And servicemen are often impersonated for this because then you have a reason for not physically being located where I'm physically located, right? For those. This is where we most often hear romance scams, or where we most often hear about what's called the West African Transnational Criminal Organizations, or the TCOs, the West African TCOs. This comes and goes, whether or not Nigerian scammers, that is an actual legitimate job category in Nigeria, is to be working financial scams with Europeans and Americans and Canadians. It has to do with Nigeria being an English-speaking country. It, just is part of the backbone of the economy. And it's just like we have narco traffickers in certain areas of the world, we have online fraud traffickers, TCOs, happening in this particular region of Africa. So when you hear about that in the news, we're usually talking about something to do with a romance scam, something to do with an English language scam that has moved into the text messaging field. Okay. All right, and then this last one is something probably all of us have experienced in our lives. If you've never experienced any of the other frauds, you've probably experienced this one. This is the fraud department scam, and these can be on the phone. Most often these days they're in text, right? Did you authorize this purchase? No. Oh, don't worry, we'll get straightened out. Give me your credit card, give me your social. What's the last 5 of your social, et cetera, et cetera. It's gaining trust, logging into an account. You usually send a one-time passcode. You click on the passcode, now you've got malware, or now somebody is able to actually control your computer, start accessing your bank account information and drain your accounts while you're still on the phone with them. We also see this happening a little bit these days with, if you've ever gone out to a site, I know this happens sometimes with a site that has to do with like golf or something, some hobby related thing or some magazine related thing. And then all of a sudden you get a pop-up that says, you're a winner. You've won blah, blah, blah. Okay. Some of those are just scams. Just if you click on it, they take you to an advertisement. The advertisement wants you to buy something for 99 cents and they'll send you something worth $50. Like some of it's just that. But some of it is actual malware. So it depends. So never ignore the pop-ups. You didn't win. You didn't win the iPad. Just don't think you did. That's out there. Now, sorry, let's go back a second. Those scams fall into 3 different categories: phishing, smishing, and spoofing. Phishing, so that's phony phishing, put it together, phishing. These are when you get those emails, right? Usually start as emails. So this will say, well, it can say anything, but it's usually something about, we couldn't deliver your FedEx package. click here to get delivery, or please leave an Amazon review for this item. And you're like, I didn't buy this item. And it says, if you did not buy this item, click here. Your account may have been hacked. Okay, those are phishing emails. Successful phishing attempts try to steal your credentials. They try to steal your passcodes. So that Amazon one, when you click on it, it'll say, oh, you've been scammed. Reset your internet, reset your Amazon password, enter your old password, enter your new password. Well, that new password, they don't care. They care that you entered the old password. And now they're going into your Amazon account. Smishing stands for smartphone and phishing. Put that together, you get smishing. Smishing is the same thing that's happening in phishing, but now we're doing it in text messages, right? Your online account has been revoked due to suspicious activities. Click here. Never, ever, ever click something off of a text message unless you have asked for that text message, okay? Unless you have signed up for the alerts or unless you trust it, okay? I really hate, who's the gas company? Not BPW, the other one around, Semco. I signed up for, digital. I don't want all the paper coming in the mail. And what do they send me text messages? Click here. And I'm like, Semco, every single time I have to, it's a great reminder because you just send me a reminder and I'll go out to your site and log into my account. I'm not clicking on anything from this email, even though I asked for you to send me these. I'm not doing it. I don't trust you, Semco. I don't trust that somebody is going to spoof Semco's site. Okay, so spoofing is mimicking someone else's phone number, someone else's text message, someone else's emails. Okay. Now, smishing has gotten really complicated recently, has gotten very advanced. So you can see in this one, in this upper left-hand corner, this M&T alert, you can see that says HTTP, the green part, HTTPS : //. That S, in years past, we were taught if the S is part of the HTTP, S stands for secure, that means that the website is secure. And that's still good advice if you're on the internet, if you're actually like trying to get to Kohl's. You want to make sure you click on Kohl's where it says HTTPS before you buy anything, right? When you get to the site of putting something in your cart, you click on your cart, you want to make sure it says HTTPS, S meaning secure, your financial data won't be shared. But they're putting that into a text message. Does that go to a legitimate secured site? To be honest, I don't know, because it's much easier in text messages to get the system to make it look like it's a legitimate address. That's harder to do in email, which is why the email scams usually have buttons that you push. It's harder to do in email because those email systems are set up for people to actually do legitimate business in email. So they have a bunch of safeguards to make sure you're, as the user, not doing something stupid and putting in the wrong address. So they have catches. Text messages is a little bit more lawless than that. I can make that link to anything. It might go to a website, might not go to a website. Also on here, you'll see that both that one, and I think it's the one next to it on the upper right, it's the HTTPS, it has some address, and this is .com. So it's not, they used to be so easy to spot these because they were .us or .info or something really weird. RU, okay, well, that's Russia. Like, I'm not clicking on that, right? And they've learned how to disguise all that. So these addresses look legitimate. So it's very hard, very, very hard these days to figure out if you're actually going to a legitimate site. All right, so let's talk about personal information and data permanency. So this is what falls into the realm of keeping ourselves safe by doing what is called data hygiene, okay? What are our good hygiene practices to keep ourselves safe in the cyber world? So first of all, be aware that right now, all of us in the cyber world, we have a bunch of things that exist online. If you've ever picked up a phone or a computer, or in the last 20 years, somewhere along the line, and especially if you're part of social media, you have left a trail of your passwords, your location. We're going to talk a lot about this in a second. Your school, which not the school you're attending, the schools you attended, which is going to give people a lot of information about how to contact you, right? Oh, hey, I was in the class of 65 as well. Do you remember me? Yeah, that sort of thing. Address, your address. We can find everybody's address online, so don't get weirded out by this yet. Addresses. And then your phone numbers, okay? Those are all over the web, which gives people automatically an in to talk to you. So if anybody is like, oh, yeah, I remember you, and hey, do you still live at blah, blah, blah address in Holland? Okay, they got that off the web. Don't be mystified how they knew your address or your phone number. that's out there. Okay, so you're going to take away the fact that 72% of elder financial crime is committed by people that individuals know, whether family or strangers that we meet. Here's the other thing I want you to take away from today. All of your social media accounts need to be set to private, or Alice will find information about you online, okay? It has to be set to private. You have to set them to private. Your Instagram needs to be private. Your Facebook needs to be private. That X account where you just love spamming everybody needs to be set to private. All needs to be set to private. And I would love you to encourage your friends and family to set that to private as well, okay? The only exception to this is if for some reason you're running a social media account of an organization. If you're running it for a business or for an organization, you might not want to set it to private, specifically because you want individuals to find your information as part of that. If that's the case for you, there are other cyber hygiene practices that you can use, and I can talk to you after the fact about that. But for your own private accounts, they need to be set to private. Now, why? Why do we want that? Well, first of all, anybody who can see your profile can see who you're following and who your friends list is. That helps them build lies if they're trying to scam you. More importantly, it gives them access to other information, because if those individuals' accounts aren't set to private, we can start a chain reaction, okay? How many of us have received emails, spoofed messages, spoofed emails, spoofed text? This happens actually a lot at Hasp because our board members' information is accessible a lot of the time, where we receive a cryptic text that looks like it's from a legitimate person that we know, and it turns out that they need a gift card sent to them, right? Okay, that's because they're piggybacking on top of contact lists that were not made private. Okay, that's how they're getting all of our information. The information that you share from your device, particularly from social media, hugely important. And the one place that people don't realize they're sharing information is on their pictures. Every time you take a picture from your phone, unless you have turned off data services in the system setting of your phone, unless you have turned off your data sharing, that picture is encoded with data. Can you see it just from looking at the picture? No. But anybody who can get into the metadata of the photo, which is almost everybody, or you can Google, how do I get into the metadata of a picture? You can find the instruction, knows a lot about you. In particular, they know your location at the exact moment you took that photo, okay? And I'll show you a screenshot in a second of the other information they can find. If you set to private, that's fine, okay? But if you're not, this can be a real issue. This is why oftentimes you'll hear about in scams, particularly individuals who've moved off to talking with you in text or emailing you. They'll ask you to send them a picture of something. That's a way that they can verify your physical location at a specific time. So beyond sharing photos on social media and what people can get from your photos on social media, you need to be careful about who you are sharing photos with. Make sure you are sharing photos with the people you know and the people you want to share them with. Never send a photo to somebody you don't know. And I know that can be difficult. I'm working right now with a relative who's trying to move into a retirement facility. She needs to send documentation to the retirement facility. She doesn't have the ability to print, right? They can't send her something and then she prints it. And, you know, I could spend an hour trying to talk her through how to scan it back, but that's not going to work. So she's been taking pictures of the documentation. And she's been saying, oh, I'll just send them a picture in email. No, send it to me and I will deal with it. Okay, so you have to be careful about where you're doing. Okay, here's an example of the kind of things that pictures can show us through metadata. They can show when the file is created. So when a specific picture is taken. So if you visit relatives at a specific time every year, or if you're posting pictures of where you are at Christmas, you think you're posting a picture of a Christmas tree, a scammer knows that you're not in Holland, Michigan anymore, and your house isn't. Okay, so when the file is created, it can actually show the physical address of where that picture is taken and how to get directions to that physical address. Okay, that's in metadata. And then it can also show the type of device. This is from an iPhone, by the way, screenshots from an iPhone. Android works very similar. Just know that it's not safety if you're on an Android. The actual Phone type. Well, that's going to make it easy to send scam emails to you telling you that your iPhone 12 Pro Max camera is on recall. Please click here to schedule an appointment with Geek Squad to get that repaired. Okay, that's the kind of stuff that exists in metadata. Now, this is a screenshot of how you get rid of these location tagging in your photos. Do not worry about taking this. I will send out these slides. I will put that in the Hasp happenings for anybody interested in the slide deck, okay? I'll put that out there. But this is what I want you to know. Turning off data sharing or location sharing might not be a good alternative for you. Do you share your location with your family for security reasons? Do people share location, your friends and family share their location for security reasons? My family does. I've got a kid at college and a kid in high school. Okay. If there's a lockdown at West Ottawa, I want to track that phone to the millimeter of where my daughter is. So I'm not turning off location services. I'm being careful about when I take photos and where I share photos. And I have my social media set to private. Okay. So you have to make a decision for yourself. Is turning location services off the easiest thing for you? Are you not a tech savvy person, so you don't know how to turn it on and off easily between situations? Or is that something you definitely do want to do? Because you don't want to set your social media account to private, no matter what I say. You want to just full board into the Wild West, okay? So you then please turn off your location services and feel free to share all the photos you want. Okay, so you have to make these kind of decisions about what works best. It's a cost-benefit analysis for each one of us as we're working in this sphere. Okay. All right. While we're talking about this, I would be remiss to do any presentation about cybersecurity and not talk to you about passwords for a second. Passwords, we all hate it. Look, we never remember passwords. We don't like them. If you're not using an application right now called a pass key, so these are password manager apps where you only need to remember the one password manager app password, and then it manages all your passwords for your whole system. You just need to remember the password into the manager. If you're not using one of those, if you're using individual passwords for different sites, do not repeat your passwords. That's the biggest one, because if one of them is compromised for some reason, it compromises everything. And really, it's just a headache for you. It means you have to go out and change a bunch of passwords. So don't do it to yourself. Think about passphrases instead of passwords, right? My dog Henry is number one. You can shorten that with a bunch of crazy things involving characters and involving numbers. Consider that. And then if you are ever offered the option to use a passkey like your fingerprint or your face, go ahead and take it. Go ahead and take it. I know there's a lot of people that are scared about putting biometrics into the iPhone. They're not. The minor biometrics, if Apple, as a nefarious company, is stealing your biometrics to create a clone of you somehow, I don't know how, is going to be so minor. We're not there in technology. Sharing your fingerprint with your iPhone or your Android phone is not putting you at any greater risk than your passwords being compromised. Okay, so don't be scared of using biometrics right now on your phones. Okay, and actually iPhone is invested in doing some very complicated biometrics, like opening your phone with your face. They now know if you're dead or not. Can't use dead people to open phones anymore, which is a real bummer for all those detective shows. We can't open it up with that. And this is just a graph. You'll see this a lot in the industry, just telling you the more complicated your password is, the more it has upper and lowercase and numbers and things. This is based on our current computing power, okay? Because computers are the things trying to hack into your things. You can see that the more complicated, the better for you. The longer it'll take for the AI bot to break in. All right, let's talk about a couple of tips for prevention real quick. Step one, you need to talk about these scams. You need to get that word out. Remember, if you can spot a scam, you can stop a scam. Reach out to your community centers, your churches, your senior centers. I'll give you a free resource here in a minute that you can, if you're in a women's group or a men's group or a reading group, or if you just want to really bore your family because you're sick of game night, I got a presentation you can download for that. You want to make sure you're checking in on your loved one, right? Community is important, and it's very important as we get to the stages of our lives where we start losing, whether it's our natural family or our given family. Right? We need to be able to check in on one another. Community changes as we get older. You need to check in on that person you know just lost a spouse that you may only see around Evergreen Commons. You need to check in on that person who's isolated more and more over at Freedom Village, okay? Check in on each other. Check in on loved ones. We want to choose caregivers with caution. Don't be afraid to ask, particularly if you are living in a retirement community. What background checks are they performing on the individuals in those communities? Okay, they should be able to tell you that right away. Nobody should be offended by that. Make sure you're using legitimate agencies to find home health care and to find home health assistance. Don't find anybody on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace to come chop down your tree, okay? Look for legitimate tree services to chop down trees. Remember unsolicited phone calls. We don't want unsolicited. Send it to voicemail. A number of you have these fancy phone mail systems. I get it all the time because Hope's system doesn't say Hope when I call it, doesn't say Hasp. It says something weird. And so I get this all the time now. I call a Hasp member and it goes to a fancy voicemail system that says, who are you? Well, it doesn't say it as rude as that, but in essence, who are you? And leave your name and I'll see if so-and-so is available. And I say, it's Amy from Hasp. And then you guys pick up immediately. Anyway, so yeah, don't be afraid. Also remember, don't be afraid to hang up. Again, we don't get to do this anymore, but don't be afraid to hang up on people. I know you're the generation that wasn't raised to hang up on people, but feel free to. Feel free to hang up on people. And then never give out your personal information over the phone. Another hard one for all of us. We get ourselves talking in a conversation. We might say something we didn't mean to say. Just be aware of it. Remember, annual credit reports, all of us should be running this every year, just like we should be changing those batteries and those smoke detectors. You need to pick a day of the year. For my family, it's January 1st. On January 1st, we always run our annual credit report. Get it out of the way, put it on the calendar, make sure you're running that credit report. This is also where you're going to start to see some of the fraud with identity fraud. If people are opening up a lot of credit cards under your name or doing other nefarious banking activities, you'll sometimes see it on your credit report before you'll actually hear it from the institution, depending on how low key they've gone with getting your identity. Recognize those phishing attempts. Remember, legitimate emails. In an email system, there's always, it'll say the person who just sent you something, and it'll say the subject line. Right by the person's name is usually a down arrow. Click on that down arrow. It opens up the actual address that the person is sending it from. This is why the Hasp happenings sometimes gets caught in everybody's spam, is because I'm using a computer system to send those out because it has to send out 800 emails. We can't do that manually. So sometimes that gets caught in people's spam filters. But if you click on that, you should see a legitimate address. If you see something that smells fishy, it's not a legitimate email. Okay, call the person or the entity that sent that to you. Remember not to click on links. Go out yourself to the actual websites or call the actual agencies that are involved in the emails. And the biggest thing here is you need to report fraud scams. This is the only way that the government can really track this. Now, if we're talking about identity theft or we're talking about a financial loss that's in progress or is just completed, your first stop is going to be to call local law enforcement. Okay, so anytime you lose money, not to some online scam, but anytime you're losing money, you could treat it like an actual theft. Somebody just robbed you. You need to call local law enforcement. Local law enforcement is responsible for reporting any cyber crimes up to the feds when it meets a certain criteria. So when you talk to locals and have filled out the report, ask them if they're going to be passing that on to either HSI or FBI for further reporting. But when you're done talking to the locals, and if you're talking about a type of crime like my issue with the online fraud of the Christmas item, after you've talked to the locals, go to ftc.gov and report the crime. Okay, ftc.gov. That's who's tracking all these cyber crimes and helps us see the trends that are happening and the actors that are happening in this sphere. Okay. All right, here's some other resources. I mentioned at the beginning, AARP. Excellent. They have really invested in putting in time into a cyber program and a cyber education program and resources for seniors, okay? So you can sign up for their text messages. You can stay informed through that text messages. They also have this 800 number. Again, these slides will be in the Hasp happening, so you don't have to copy it down if you don't want. But they have what's called the AARP Fraud Helpline. It's an 877 number. Anybody can call it. You do not need to be an AARP member. You do not need to be over the age of 50, okay? It is a one-stop shop to tell you about not only how to avoid scams, but what to do next. So if you can't remember if you call the cops, or you can't remember if you go with that FTC website, if you call AARP's 877 number, they will send you to the right resources. Okay. They have a podcast that they do around this. They have that bi-weekly watchdog alert that can be texted to you. They have an actual website where you can report scams that feeds into the FTC site that you can do that. They also have a number of online resources. They also are on Facebook and on X. So if you have a Facebook account, you can go out and find their fraud alert page, their fraud watch, page on Facebook. Or if you're on X, which was formerly Twitter, you can find them on there as well. A lot of resources out there. They have really invested time and money in. And one of the things they've done is they've developed this 1 hour free virtual session. It's called REST, Resilience, Strength, and Time. Anybody can watch this. There's the website right there. Again, you can take that to your communities, to your friends. You can annoy people with a mass email about that. You can make your grandchildren watch it some Christmas, ask for it for your birthday present. You want them to watch that with you. So that is available for you too. Okay, key takeaways here. Financial fraud are at record levels. Elderly is expected to continue to rise as more and more of the baby boomers and now the older Gen X's start to retire. They are more the victims. They have more access to funds that these fraudsters want. And they think that you don't know how to work in the cybersphere and that's why you should be victims, but you do. So they're not going to fall for that. It's vastly underreported. So remember the FTC site. There's also this stopfraud.gov site. It feeds into the FTC. It's just another website that they put out there as part of their advertising because they got too many people asking them why the FTC was collecting that information. So they put together a different website for the government. But it's the same information goes to the same places. Talk about these scams. Reach out to your families. Reach out to your communities on this as well. I mentioned that the FTC from 2019, the U.S. Senate did a special committee on aging report. It's right there noted at the bottom of the slide. That's also from 2019. Susan Collins led that effort. That's where most of the resources that we have related to the education and the law enforcement capabilities around cybercrime and the elderly come from, is from that 2019 report. If you want to be put to bed one night really quickly, go ahead and find it and go ahead and read that up if you're out there. I'm going to leave you with a sobering thought. We're talking a lot about financial crimes, but a few years ago, there were some suicides that happened up in the Muskegon area. Now, these were younger adults. Well, they were actually high school kids who were scammed from individuals they had met on not online dating sites, but on social media. Those individuals had then moved to conversations through text messages, had asked them to send them lewd-ish pictures, and then blackmailed them, or they would release those photos to their contacts. There were 2 suicides and 2 suicide attempts. As I mentioned, 55 and older is the fastest growing in the space of dating, of the other vices that might exist out on the cybersphere. It's important for all of us to remember that putting aside any judgment we have with any of those activities online, absolutely no one needs to lose their life, right? We can all agree on that. So the more educated we become and educate our friends and family and let them know that we are a safe space for them to come talk about being frauds and victimless, hopefully we can help the younger generation in learning how to cope with this too. All right, with that said, with that happy note, I will open it up to questions. Sorry, Alice, you got to run around with that. Oh, Frank, you want to say a question first from the back?
Yeah, we have one from online, and Mary Jo was asking, how do I set my photos to private?
Oh, okay. So that's great, Mary Jo. So you don't actually want to set your photos to private. You want to set your actual social media accounts to private. So there's a difference. Your actual individual photos that are stored on your phone, you can turn off location services, a data location. That'll be in the slide deck. That was that one. Let me go back here. I'll go back on that one. That was, hold on a sec. That was this, where you can find it on your settings. Then there's no location, data location for any photo you take. But that photo just lives in on your phone And in the cloud, whatever cloud you have, that's all that's living. If you want to share photos on social media, that's when you need to make sure your social media is set to private. Whether or not you've turned off location services on the photo, make sure that your social media is set to private.
You just answered my question. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Maybe a quick follow-up to that. This is me asking. Basically, can you turn off location services to individual apps, or is this one thing for the entire phone?
So it depends on the type of iPhone that you have and if you're on an Android device. So you can toggle between them, or you can set them up specifically. Some apps will actually ask you about data sharing services. We're seeing this more and more as Americans because Europe passed a whole bunch of laws about data privacy. So if I'm a huge F1 fan, so I've noticed that when I go out to the F1 sites, when I'm on those sites, I now get this big pop-up question about cookies. Like we've all seen the cookie question before, but the one for the European sites is much more involved. And I have a lot more choices of what I can tell them I want to share and not share. That's because the site's coming from Europe and they're under a different set of laws. So it depends on the type of phone you have. It depends on what the specific app, and then it also depends on the website you're trying to access. You have to be a better consumer for that. But the short answer is yes, you should be able to toggle between them.
I just want to mention another resource for my daughter was fairly seriously, her identity was stolen through Facebook and she tried everything, but someone told her to reach out to the state attorney general. And that was very helpful. And they were so helpful with her and got it straightened out.
Here in Michigan, right? Yeah, that's a great point. Here in Michigan, we are very lucky with our current attorney general. Has been very proactive, especially in identity fraud. Not every state is that way. So you have to investigate individual states of where your relative may or may not be. But no, that's one. And if she had contacted local law enforcement, they might have sent her that direction as well. So they all are tied together here in Michigan. We're very lucky with that.
One of the problems that I see is that for people who are doing the scamming or theft, there's very little oversight. I'm going to use the example of the recent former treasurer of the Democratic Party who was found taking $400,000 from someone who I believe she was a guardian over. It seems like there's very little oversight, and a lot of times when people are caught, it's because a neighbor says, why is that person being isolated? Where I used to have access to go over and visit, I'm not allowed anymore. Or why does that, person, have these people intervening? So, or somebody in a store, a clerk saying, why is the senior buying all these gift cards?
Yeah.
It seems like that's something we should all be aware of and in tune with, and don't be afraid to report to senior protective services or something.
No, and you actually bring up a good point. There's actually a whole education campaign from Homeland Security that's specifically targeted to the baking industry and to different commercial companies. And it's specifically about spotting elder fraud or fraud cases. So there's different companies that have taken this more serious than other. Believe it or not, 7-Eleven has actually done an education campaign because they're the ones that have the cryptocurrency machines in their stores. So they've done an education campaign for their clerks to be more aware of individuals coming in and not knowing how to work a cryptocurrency machine and then just being very panicky while on the phone trying to do cryptocurrency, to intervene in those situations and to call the police. So you've actually seen a couple news stories of clerks at 7-Elevens calling the police because they see something suspicious related to those cryptocurrencies. There is education out there. One of the biggest problems, and I don't have another 7 hours to just rant about this, is our laws around recuperating money, particularly money that has gone to international actors. We have really, really poor laws in America, and we are doing nothing to try to harden those laws or to work with other countries to have better input into recoups of money for our citizens who lose money to international actors. We've identified the international actor, have actually frozen the funds and cannot get those funds back to the American citizens because of the way our system works, our justice system works. It's lamentable, easily fixable, an administrative issue as far as I'm concerned. And it makes it so individuals don't have a reason to stop. You know, they don't have that.
Could you talk about cookies?
Yes. As somebody who eats gluten-free, I have very many opinions about cookies. Yeah. Okay, so cookies, easiest way to look at that is a piece of information that the system that has asked you to accept the cookie has asked you to accept this little data information package that will allow information that is on your system to be shared back to the entity that gave you the cookie. Okay, it's the easiest way to say it. Oftentimes what it's looking for is your location. It could be looking for some data around who you are as a human. If you're male, if you're female, your age cohort, depends kind of on what it can get. Oftentimes it's looking for your email address. The reason companies want to put cookies on, and then also whether or not you've been to the site before. So a couple of reasons the companies want to put cookies on our system, so that they know you've been to their site before, so they know to target, and they're tracking kind of how you're going through, like if you're on a shopping site, they're kind of noticing the things you're clicking on. And then the next time you go back to that site, they might push those items up. If you're always going to Kohl's.com and looking for blouses, you're going to start seeing a lot more blouses as being on the front page when you go to Kohl's.com, because they put a cookie in there that showed them, and all it showed them was your click history. You were clicking on blouses a lot. So the next time you go back, well, you'd have to do it 3 or 4 times, but then it would start putting blouses towards the top. So that's why they want it in there. Now, sometimes they want a different thing. The one that always throws people off is access to contacts, right? So they want a cookie that wants to access your contact list. Always say no to that cookie if you're able to. And if you ever at a site where it doesn't allow you, these are usually US sites, doesn't allow you to see what cookies, there's not a button about more information or what the cookies are going to do, scroll off the site. Don't use that site. Don't say yes, unless it's a site, again, a site where you can click on the more information. And then if you look at the information and if you feel comfortable with that, share it. Most of the time, again, most of these with shopping sites are collecting very minimal. Because remember, at a certain level, you have to understand too, that for legitimate companies, they're collecting all this data on us, but what's data? Like, okay, great, it's information. We're not to the point yet where we have the computing power to take all of the shopping data of an entire planet and make it meaningful, right? So they're limiting the data. They threw a wide net a long time ago, but now they're trying to get a lot more specific about the data they want to collect from us because they're just inundated with too much data. Does that help? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a site out there, something 360. My wife and I are both of the age we might be making too many left turns when we ought to be turning right. Mm-hmm. So we kind of keep track of each other. Yeah. Now this is location.
Location service.
It can also tell me how long my wife has been in the house, what time she got there, what time she mm-hmm. left. It's that, I mean, it's a normal one in our family. We all keep track of each other. Good, bad.
Yeah, my in-laws use it for that. We use a different set of apps for my personal family because we have a smart home. We don't touch a light switch. We don't have keys. We don't do, you know, if the internet goes out, I'm stuck at my house forever and ever with the lights off. But yeah, there are but you have, when you download that app, you share who goes into that app with you, right? So if anybody ever asks to be part of your 360 and you don't know them, obviously say no. But no, those things are as hackable as anything else. Hacking is a whole other set of data privacy issues. It'd be very rare for somebody to use those location services by hacking into your system. As long as you're using your biometrics to open your phone or your computer, or you're using passwords to get in and out of the systems, you're at the same level of security as any other app that you're using. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned pulling a free credit report once a year.
Yes.
There's one additional item that goes beyond that that's critical. Most of us as seniors aren't buying a new house every year or a new car every year. So freeze your credit.
Hmm.
Because if you freeze your credit, no one can open a credit card in your name. Second, along with credit cards, many people here have iPhones. I don't know about Android, but I think Android does it as well. If you have an iPhone or an iPhone watch or Apple Watch, put your credit cards into Apple Pay and use Apple Pay at almost every retailer accepts Apple Pay these days. Why would you do that? If I give you my credit card, you can write down my number, and when I leave, you can charge stuff in my name. If you use Apple Pay using the same credit card, Apple issues a one-time use token. And if you try to use that again, it will be rejected. So it's a great security measure. And third, as seniors, we travel a lot. If you are away from your home and you want to access your financial information, never use public Wi-Fi. If you have a cell phone, cellular data is far more secure than any public Wi-Fi. Thank you.
Yeah, no, those are all great, great things. I do get that question a lot about whether or not Tap Pay is safe. Yes, Tap Pay is safe. It's safe on Android as well as on Apple. Google Wallet is very safe, and it allows you to work internationally, so you don't have to carry as many cards when you go international. You can use the Tap Pays. The one thing I would say about the public Wi-Fi, yes, don't use public Wi-Fi for most things. If you're just surfing on the net or Amazon, feel free to use the hotel website, for instance, or the hotel Wi-Fi with public. But the other thing I would caution is be suspicious of any private Wi-Fi if you're international. So international actors, public versus private Wi-Fi gets a little wonky. So unless you're using a data hotspot run from your actual phone, don't use, be suspicious of private Wi-Fi as well. Mm-hmm.
We have a few more online questions. One is, with the current administration's cutbacks and dissolution of government consumer fraud agencies and thereby investigations, how likely will a reported case really be investigated?
They're going to collect the data. Investigations is, well, I can tell you that Homeland Security Investigations is currently frozen with Internet Activity Investigations. They have been sent to do immigration enforcement. So most of HSI is not involved anymore with that. They also dissolved CISA, which is the C3, we called it, which is the cybersecurity unit, got dissolved out of DC. I'm not optimistic. Let me just put it that way. Not optimistic that right now there's a lot. That doesn't mean that it's not important to report it. Because the FTC is still doing trend analysis. At some point in time, some investigator will be freed up to pick up this giant caseload. And if they see trends or if they see a specific hotspot location, that will be important to them. And this also might be an opportunity for states like the attorney generals, states like the state police and the local police to work into the space. They haven't had a need to work into the space because the federal government has covered them on this. Well, if the feds drop the ball on this and they're still getting calls, victims in their local communities, maybe they pick up the ball. So it's still important to report it, even if right now the investigative desire is not there from our federal agents.
Okay, if our finances are in a trust, are we safe from fraud?
You're never safe from fraud is the short answer to that. But having things, anytime you start to involve trust, anytime you start to involve accounts that are bundled for you, like in money market accounts or stock accounts or your retirement accounts, your retirement systems, anytime you start to involve the lawyers, you get a lot more secure. So as long as you're working with a legitimate lawyer, as long as you're working through legitimate avenues for that, yes, you are secure. Now, can those individual companies be hacked? Sure. Individuals can get into those systems. There's a whole set of ways that people get into secure systems and secure companies. So there's always a risk involved anytime we put our money anywhere. But a bank can get robbed too. Our wallets can get robbed also. So you're more likely, to be honest, to be a victim of a fraudulent lawyer or a Ponzi scheme in an investment if you're working through a brokerage house than you are to have cyber criminals try to defraud you out of something involving the trust.
A bit earlier, you said go to Facebook for something. And I'm wondering how trustworthy is Facebook? Because now I hate to go to that site because everything I see is fake or that, and I'm sitting there. You can't trust, does it? I don't see a thing that I can trust anymore.
Yeah, so Facebook is complicated. It's okay. The short answer is you can still trust Facebook. The larger answer is you have to manage Facebook a lot more than you used to. Okay, so if your account is set to private and Facebook is still a meaningful social app for you, if it's still a place where you can go out and find pages you like, individuals you want to interact with, family members you want to interact with, resources you want to interact with, then you can set your account to private and you can follow only the things you want to follow. Your feed's going to be full of advertising and a lot of other stuff, other word I won't say, until you have spent, and I'm talking days, Suzanne, days, Xing out every single thing you don't want. You do that for 2 days and Facebook learns a new algorithm. And now it's not throwing those ads at you. But the minute you click on one of those ads, the algorithm's back. And you have to start going in and clicking it. So these systems now, it's not that they've gone, the X is a whole different thing. I don't want to talk about X. But all the other ones, it's not like Instagram and Facebook have just gone off the reservation. It's the fact that now as a user, we have to be smarter and we have to manage them constantly. So I spent a good week. This was, I don't know, wasn't the snow week. It was a while back. I spent a week just on my Facebook, Xing everything out religiously. I mean, I was sitting in front of the TV, just Xing stuff out. Now my feed is great. It's only the stuff I want to see. Did you put that little X? Right down on the right side. You just get rid of everything you don't want. And if the ads have a little dot, you click on it and you say, I don't want to see this ad. Or report it as suspicious or spam or a scam. Start reporting them. But you've got to be religious about it. Do you guys have that time? Do you want to? Do you care? I don't know. That being said, I would be remiss if not to tell you the communications department is this close to launching a Hasp Facebook page. So, yeah, okay.
When you delete a photo, is the prior location and information deleted?
Yes, if you delete a photo off of your phone, it's no longer on your phone. However, remember, it may still be in the cloud. It depends on how you set up your cloud services. So you have to physically remove something from a cloud if you have auto backup into your individual cloud. And the cloud for iPhones and the cloud for Androids work slightly different.
So you have a couple more questions about that. Does the metadata go with images if someone in your private access group downloads the image?
It could if you don't have your, yeah, it will. Now, if they're set to private or if they're only downloading it into their personal phones or into their personal cloud, it's not too much of a risk. You just want to verify that that person is private. There is, by the way, if you are part of a photography club or something like that, where they're utilizing a system to download mass photos from individuals, the data will be scrubbed. So for instance, when we download photos that go in the Hasp review, our system scrubs out the metadata of those particular photos, but that's because our system is set up to scrub that out when we download it to put into the files that the communications department uses.
Sometimes I receive a message or voicemail which includes a quote, report junk, unquote link. What happens when I click on that link?
Yeah, so depending on your email service, it gets reported as junk. That address, that physical IP address that came from gets reported into a system. If they see a lot of individuals reporting a specific address, then it is blocked from the actual email system itself. Also, depending on your email, if you're in one of the more sophisticated ones like Gmail or Yahoo, or even Outlook or anything like that, once you report it as junk, anytime anything comes in from that address, it will automatically go to your junk email, your little folder. This is why it's very important not to click your Hasp happenings and say it's junk. You can tell me it's junk. Don't report it as junk.
Should I delete the cookies on my system?
Okay, so yes. Short answer is yes. When you do that, all of the saved passwords for any system that you've saved the passwords for will disappear. It's because you've eliminated all of the cookies. Now, I do this periodically about once a quarter, eliminate all the cookies on all the computers in the office and my own personal computer. I do this because we're going to so many different websites that there's so many cookies that it lags the system. And sometimes the cookies interact with each other. It depends on what you're doing online. So this becomes a problem for us. And so we have to do that. And then I annoyingly have to two-factor authenticate us into every single device. So you have to make the choice on whether or not it's too annoying for you. But yes, good hygiene practices is to eliminate cookies periodically, at least once a year. Eliminate the cookies from your devices.
Does the 360 site gather data and share it with insurance companies?
Oh, that I'm not sure. I don't have that app, so I don't know. That would be something you would want to, unfortunately, read in that 900-page user agreement, what you're agreeing to.
And then can you talk about real estate fraud, fake deeds, and selling your house from underneath you?
Oh, unfortunately, I cannot. I cannot speak about real estate. That's a whole other separate fraud. Yes, deeds and that huge one for individuals who own their own homes, which is more likely the older generations for that. What I would encourage you to do is to Google search on those and to go to AARP, because AARP's website has a whole real estate section in their fraud website. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think one last question from over here. Do we have?
Yeah, I'm curious about asking AI about a specific text that that it smells like fraud. Is that a legitimate way to find out if it really is fraud?
Oh, you mean ask AI, hey, AI, I just got a message that said blah, blah, blah. Is it fraud?
Is this fraud?
Yeah. Right now, the AIs are dumb. They're not trying to get one over on you. They're going to give you a legitimate answer based on what they know, based on what they've been programmed to know. So right now, if you put in, hey, does this sound suspicious to you? It'll probably spit out some little, vanilla thing about, well, that doesn't sound right. The language is a little this and that. You should be suspicious of any activities. And here's where you can go for more information on that.
Yeah.
It'll spit out something a little bit more complicated than a Google answer.
Yeah. For us, it's been an easy way to go, and it's usually been right.
Yeah. Yeah. Right now, AIs, I'm a big fan of AI. I do not want to tell you how much they name your classes in the Hasp catalog. Right now they're dumb. Like I said, no, there are people, they will eventually become to the point where they're trying to steer you in one direction or another. But right now, they're a good source of information of just scanning a lot of different things, a lot of different websites, a lot of different answers, a lot of different videos, and getting you an answer. Mm-hmm. Yes, last question.
How do I get rid of cookies?
Oh, okay. So so it depends on the type of device you're on, whether you're on a phone, whether you're on a tablet, or whether you're on a computer. Also depends on if you're coming from Android or if you're coming from any of the iDevices, iPhones, iTablets, that. The best thing I can tell you, the easiest thing I can tell you is go ahead and open up a browser, right? Open up Chrome or open up Safari and just type in there, how do I remove the cookies from and blank, put in the device. My iPhone 16, my iPad mini, my Google phone, right? Put that in, and then it will give you step-by-step instructions. Yes, even if you have, you'll have to eliminate cookies on both, because your phones and your tablets, especially in the world, you're sharing an account, but the actual cookies are on the devices. So they're on the hardware. Yeah. For that. All right. Great conversation. Thank you all very much.
Great. I have a feeling there are other topics we could have you talk about, aren't there? Thanks, everyone. Hope you have a good day, and you'll be seeing this
information
and the Hasp happenings.